The Revolutionary Wars and the Napoleonic Wars are an extremely interesting and very important moment of our history. This is also a moment of history which extremely interested me from my early years. I remember having read a lot of books, a lot of comic books concerning this epoch, and I often imagined how would it be to be part of all those events described in the books and in the comic books. I imagined being a Napoleonic soldiers fighting on the fields of Austerlitz or Borodino. Imagine my enthusiasm when I learned that we do have a war game which covers this epoch and which allows us to incarnate a grognard living during the Napoleonic Wars. I was absolutely thrilled. Hello everyone, this is Michel Leviathan-Sorbet and this is a new episode of Wojennik TV. Today a review of a game which I have already showed on my channel a few times, because I have showed both the unboxing in Polish as well as in English, as well as also a playthrough released in Polish presenting how the game works. This will be the review of Legion of Honor. Legion of Honor was released in 2014 by Clash of Arms Games. It is a game designed for 1 to 6 players, so it is possible also to play it solitaire. The time of play will be from 240 to even 480 minutes. It all depends on the scenario, on the campaign that we choose to play. In its whole scope, the game can recreate the whole plethora of events which started from 1792, so from the Revolutionary Wars, up to 1815 and the climatic battle of Waterloo, or of the Battle of Mont Saint-Jean if you prefer. So it is possible to retrace all the events which took part during this period, and during this period we will incarnate a French soldier, starting from a simple soldier, but then climbing through different ranks and maybe even achieving the rank of general or the title of Maréchal de l'Empire. So in this game we will have a very different point of view, a very different perspective from the majority of war games, in which we focus on battles, on campaigns, on the strategical or tactical level. Here it's a perspective of an individual soldier, our own perspective. The game was designed by Richard Kane and Mike Rappler, and what's interesting is that the art used for the game was art created in the epoch, for instance by Theodore Géricault. So a lot of art which was used in the game, for instance on the box cover or on several cards, was taken from the epoch and is due to paintings which were created by some very famous authors. Today, a presentation of the game. I'd like to show you how the components of the game look, then briefly explain what are the key concepts of Legion of Honor, and in the final part of the video, as usually, my final thoughts concerning this title, when I'd like to explain you what I liked in the game, what I liked less, what I think are the strong but also the weaker points of this design. So let's begin by taking a look at how Legion of Honor looks and how it works. Here is a brief look at Legion of Honor. Legion of Honor is obviously a game which enables us to incarnate a grognard during the Napoleonic Wars. The game starts in 1792 and it ends in 1815. But it is possible to play also a shorter scenario, because when playing Legion of Honor we can play the whole campaign as well as a shorter scenario, for instance one which
starts in 1792, but which ends at the moment that Napoleon is crowned. We can also play a shorter scenario starting from the moment when Napoleon is crowned and that ends in 1815. It all depends on what we want to play and what is the length of the game that we choose to play. Now, each player during the game will incarnate a grognard, and our main objective will be to become the most influential, the most successful soldier in the empire. When the game ends, the game is resolved in such a way that each grognard earns victory points for his achievements during the game. Firstly, 1 point is accorded to the grognard who managed to obtain the highest rank, because during gameplay we will be changing ranks. This will be indicated on our grognard sheet. Each grognard will have his own sheet on which he will indicate his current rank, his current glory level, experience, money, health, etc. And among those stats we have the rank stats, which can vary from sergeant up to general. So the grognard who manages to obtain the highest rank during the game will score 1 victory point. 1 victory point will be scored by the grognard who managed to obtain the highest amount of glory during the course of play. 1 point to the grognard who will be the most wealthy, who will have the most money, and finally 1 point to the one who will have the highest level in the Legion of Honor section, because it is also possible to receive Legion of Honor medals, to become even to receive even the Grande Croix de la Légion d'honneur. If more than one grognard have the same achievement, each of them scores 1 point, and the grognard who has the most number of points wins. Additionally, in the rules we have also an additional possibility of winning. It is a possibility linked to the one and only moment when the game can deviate from history, because what deserves to be underlined is that in general during the game we will be reliving the most important historical events which occurred during the Revolutionary Wars and during the Napoleonic Wars, and we won't have the impact on those events in the way that we cannot change their outcome. So, for instance, there is no possibility of the Egyptian expedition of Napoleon not to happen. We cannot also change the outcome of the disastrous Russian campaign. We cannot change the fact that the Battle of Wagram, Aspern-Essling, Friedland will be fought. They will happen at some time, because during the game we will be playing several seasons and the events which are described during those seasons will absolutely happen. But one thing can happen differently. It is the outcome of the Battle of Waterloo, and it is possible due to the draw of one special combat card, the Victory at Mont Saint-Jean, to change the outcome of this battle. It is possible to make this battle a French victory, and if it happens, the player who draws this card during the battle also becomes a victor of the game. So this is an interesting alternative, but it is also an important thing to underline that in this game it's not about winning, it's not about rivalry between grognards, it's not about counting points during the game. It's all about living an adventure, it's all about a great experience by trying to be part of the historical events of the Napoleonic Wars. And we can even feel it while reading the rulebook, because in the section concerning victory conditions we can read that the conditions for winning the game provide the necessary purpose to direct game activity. However, one would hope that grognards are not overly preoccupied by such a petty and vulgar ambition as winning. And I must say that I totally agree with it. This game is not meant to be a game in which we try to score a maximum number of victory points. Of course, it's nice to win, but it's not the purpose of the game. The purpose is to relive, to experience the Napoleonic Wars from the perspective of a single soldier. During the game, we will be tracking several information concerning our soldier. We will be tracking our current rank, our office if we happen to have any, our title. We will be tracking the level of Legion of Honor medals that we received. We will be tracking Napoleon's notice, which means how much the emperor is aware of our existence. We will track our glory and experience, which alongside Napoleon's notice will influence the possibility of changing rank, of becoming, for instance, a colonel, a general de brigade, or a general de division. Then we will also track our money, both kept in Paris as well as in our purse, because obviously when we go campaigning, we cannot take all our money that we have in Paris with us. Well, we can, but it will be extremely dangerous because during battles we can be taken prisoner, we can be robbed on the road, etc. So it's obviously more secure, it's more wise to leave some money in Paris and to have only a certain amount in our purse while traveling. We track also our health, which can deteriorate due to wounds, due to accidents, but also due to the natural process of aging. We will be tracking our charm, which will influence the capability of behaving accordingly in some situations, as well as it will also influence our possibility of interacting with ladies present in the game. We can track our fencing skills, which will be important when dueling. And finally, we will track our standing in our current assignment, because during the game, during each season, each grognard will be assigned to a specific corps, to a specific army, and only grognards in a corps or in an army involved in a historical event can take part in such an event. Now, the second sheet, which is used in the game, will be the fair sex sheet, which is an optional rule, but I strongly recommend you to try it because it is a set of rules which add ladies to the game. Up to 10 ladies can be brought into the game. Each of them have a certain number, has a certain amount of charm, influence, and money. And during the game, grognards can try to court those ladies in order to become their lovers or husbands. So, for instance, it is possible to have a lady as our wife, which will grant us some benefits, but which will also require us to support our wife, to support our home by spending some money. Additionally, we can also make some of the ladies our mistresses. It is even possible to make one of Over's grognard's wife our mistress, which will make such a grognard a cuckold. So even such rules are included in this game. The game itself is played in a series of seasons, and during each of those seasons we will be recreating events which historically happened during such a season. And when playing a specific season, we will be executing a certain amount of actions. We will play a certain amount of rounds. Firstly, we will play a short phase related to the first sex. We will be verifying if the stats concerning charm, influence, and money of the ladies present in the game change. Then we will also taxated, because if we keep money in Paris, this money will be subject to some taxation. We will be then verifying our assignment, which is an extremely important element of the game, because as I said earlier, only grognards assigned to a specific corps or army can then take part in events related to such a corps. So during this phase, each grognard will be assigned to a specific army or corps during a specific season. For instance, in season 10 we can be assigned to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th Corps, to the Reserve Corps, or to the Army of Italy. It all will depend on a die roll. So for instance, rolling the 2 dice where the blue will be the 10s will tell us that with a result of 72 we will be assigned to the Reserve Corps, which means that we will be able to take part only in the events which will be related to this corps. If we are not satisfied by our assignment, because it is possible to track what opportunities such an assignment gives us, using the opportunity sheets telling us what happens in different seasons and in relation to all the corps. For instance, in season 10 we can see that the Reserve Corps will not take part in absolutely anything, so it won't be very interesting. Here only Revolt of May the 2nd, all grognards per 1d to roll. Here we have the 3rd Corps, which would be more interesting during season 10. So knowing all this, at the start of the next round, which is the in-garrison round, we can try also to ask for a reassignment, which is possible by going to a furlough. Now, the in-garrison round is an extremely interesting addition, because in most games, in most war games, we recreate only battles, we recreate only campaigns, we recreate only the big events which happened during the period which is simulated. But here, between those events, so between campaigning, between big battles, we have a normal soldier's life, which is at most times related to his presence in his garrison. So we have also an in-garrison round, during which we will be constructing a special in-garrison deck. Firstly, we will verify which cards, which special event cards are related to the current season played. Here, for instance, we have one such a card. We have a second one which are related to season 10. We grab those cards starting from the first one and we construct an in-garrison deck, because additionally to those event cards we have a whole deck of garrison cards on which we have very different events. For instance, we have a card in which we can read that you please your commander. We can have idle time. We can have cards ending the round. Dine with magistrate, an Etienne Girard encounter, idle time, commit faux pas, etc. So we have a lot of events which are maybe not historical events, but which add a lot of flavor, which add a lot of realism to what happens in the game. So from among those cards, we draw a number of cards and we form a deck which should comprise a number of cards equal to the number of grognards multiplied by 3. So when playing solitaire, we will be having a deck of 3 cards. In a 2-player game, we will be having 6 cards in our deck. Then we will shuffle this deck, and beginning by the senior grognard, each grognard will draw 1 card from the deck. And here, when drawing such a card, we will execute such a card. Now, when playing such a card, we can execute the actions which are described on the card. For instance, here we can pick an action. We can exercise, increasing our health. We can carouse, which enables us to increase our glory. We can meet a lady, which enables us to court or propose a lady. We can request a transfer. We can seek office, challenge, corrupt, gamble. So a lot of different actions possible. We can also, if we happen to draw the special event card, take part in a very special event. Here it is the Peace of Tilsit. But here only the men of 3rd Corps impress the Tsar during negotiations on the Niemen River. So all the grognards which are assigned to this very specific corps will earn a certain number of benefits. This is why it is absolutely crucial to be part of a corps which can be involved in some historical events. We play in such a way, drawing cards from the deck until an end of round card is drawn or all cards from the deck are drawn. Then such a round ends and we reconstruct the deck if any special in garrison events are still available, playing one more round of events. After doing so, we will replay in the same manner the last round of the game, of the turn, which is the on-campaign round. Now, during the on-campaign round, the same rules will apply, with the difference that we will be drawing cards from the on-campaign deck. Firstly, we will check if we have any special campaign events related to the current season. Here, as you can see, we do not have any 10 event, but imagining that this is campaign 11, we would draw all the cards related to the 11th season. We have 3 of them, and we will again construct a deck, firstly for card A, using on-campaign cards this time. Again, here we have cards which will, for instance, include cards on the march, probe enemy, fight of marauders, sack a town, bivouac, skirmish, halt march, and around also success against enemy, etc. So we have a lot of different things that can happen. So once more, we construct such a deck, drawing randomly cards from the deck. We will shuffle this deck, and once again, each grognard will draw a card. If such a card includes the battle, the event, we again have the information which corps are engaged in such a battle, and those grognards which are part of those corps will have to resolve combat cards. Here we will draw cards from one additional deck, which is the combat deck, and this card will tell us what happens with us during this battle. Depending on our rank, because we can be a line officer, a field officer, a general. In this situation, a major is treated a field officer, so we will only read the middle part of the card. We will have to check for several information. Firstly, we will have to check if we were wounded, if we were taken prisoner, and then we can increase our Napoleon's notice, glory, experience. We can also increase our money. So depending on the combat card, different things can happen. Sometimes it is more probable that we will be wounded because the probability is higher, especially when we are executing more dangerous tasks. For instance, if our unit is overrun, the probability of being wounded as a line officer is extremely high. But if we are held in reserve, the probability of being wounded is significantly smaller. So after executing all those cards, we end the round. Before, we can also take income, we can transfer money, etc., but those are lesser events during a turn. After finishing all the on-campaign rounds, a season ends and we can play a new season, restarting from the beginning by the campaign season segment. Now, there is a lot of additional stuff in this game. There are a lot of additional rules which I won't be covering right now, concerning, for instance, dueling, misfortunes such as wounds, such as being taken prisoner, even dying, because it is possible to die, but then to restart playing, incarnating our relative or another grognard who takes the place of the killed one. We can go on furlough, as I said earlier. We can also relive the 100 days campaign. We can be persecuted by the Bourbon family, returning to France if the victory at Mont Saint-Jean doesn't happen. We can acquire money, experience, glory. But I won't be explaining all those rules right now. Rather, I'd like to invite you to the conclusion of this video, during which I'd like to tell you what I think about Legion of Honor, what I liked in this game, and do I feel that this is an interesting title and who might enjoy it.
Legion of Honor is a game which from the start interested me a lot because of its unique perspective, because also of its climatic flavor and of the fact that in the game we can incarnate a Napoleonic soldier and live a story, live an adventure during the whole Napoleonic years. So this is a game which was an auto-buy for me and which I was really excited to try. Judging a game, I always start by the components, by the quality and by the functional aspect of what we receive in the box. So let's begin by this element. Firstly, it deserves to be mentioned that Legion of Honor is a game in which we receive high quality components. In terms of building the climate, in terms of using all the elements which are inside the box, those components are really great. And using them increases our pleasure of playing, increase the climate of the game, and really make you feel that you are living an adventure during the Napoleonic Wars, thanks to the fantastic art, thanks to all the events which are recreated on the cards. Additionally, it's important to underline that in most games which are focused on historical events, we have only information concerning the most important events which happened during the period. So when we have Napoleonic games, we have a focus on the big battles, on the campaigns, but very few games focus on the perspective of an individual. And Legion of Honor is one of such titles, because apart from all the most important events which occurred during the Napoleonic Wars, which are presented on the cards drawn during each season, we have also a lot of very small scale elements, very small scale events, which are part of our everyday life. So when creating and when drawing garrison cards, we will be having interactions with our superior, we will be able to go on furlough to meet a lady, we will be able to train fencing, or maybe to gamble and to lose or win some money. So those very small things which make our life such as it is increase the feeling that we are living an adventure, but from the perspective of an individual soldier. And this is, in my opinion, one of the strongest points of Legion of Honor. Its unique perspective of the whole Napoleonic Wars, which enable us not only to relive, to recreate the most important moments, such as the Russian campaign, the Battle of Borodino, the Battle of Wagram, the Treaty of Tilsit, but also small elements which make us think of an individual, of his preferences, of his likings, of moments which maybe make him sad, make him weak. All those make the game a unique experience, and it also makes the game quite enjoyable. When judging the quality of the components, we also have to judge, are they functional? And here we have two aspects. The first one is the quality of the elements which we will be using during gameplay, and the second one is the rulebook. About the rulebook, I will talk in a few moments, but judging the other elements, I must say they are of a high quality, both from the point of view of how they look, but also how they are used. The most important and the most enjoyable aspect of Legion of Honor is, in my opinion, the climate and the narrative which is part of the game. This is a game which is meant to be played by people who like narrative games, who like games in which we have a lot of climate, who also are fans of the epoch, because this is a game which was created for people who want to know more about the Napoleonic Wars, or who know a lot and who would like to live an adventure set in those days. And if we enjoy this period of history, if we have a group of players who are also keen on living adventures set in the Napoleonic Wars, this is a game which will shine, in which we will be having a lot of fun, reliving all the major events which were part of this period, taking part in campaigns, taking part in battles, then discussing about our experience. For instance, we will be having a grognard who had the possibility of joining Napoleon in Egypt, taking part in the Battle of the Pyramids. Then we will have other grognards who, for instance, were present at the siege of Danzig or who took part in the campaign of Russia, and then we'll be able to share our experience, then to look back at all this history, at all the story that we lived, and seeing what were the key events of our military career. So playing this game requires us to enjoy historical flavor. It requires also to give something from ourselves, because playing the game only mechanically, using all the mechanics which are part of the game, won't be much fun. All the fun comes in living the adventure, and this requires us to give something from ourselves and to build this narrative which really makes the game shine. So what I really enjoyed in the game is the perspective of an individual, because as I said a few moments ago, the focus is on you. The focus is on what you're doing, what you're achieving, and who you will become. Because the objective is not to score the most number of points. Even in the rulebook we have a small hint telling us that points may matter for someone, but in reality, the most important thing is to have a great career, to have a great time, to enjoy the story which the game tells. What I really like also in the game is the fact that we do have a lot of chrome, we have a lot of details which really enable us to live adventures set in the Napoleonic Wars. So we will be fighting duels, both using swords as well as pistols. We have rules governing what happens when we are taken prisoner. We have rules governing the first sex. We can have mistresses, wives. We can acquire money. We can invest our money. We can go on furlough. We can do a lot of things, which really gives you the possibility to have some impact on what happens in the game. So from this point of view, we cannot say that the game is really focused only on the historical events. We have also some additional elements which are there in order to simulate better how living in this period looked like. So what, in my opinion, are the weaker points of this design? Firstly, I'd say that two things concerning the quality of the elements are not very well done. The first one, which is the most important element, is the rulebook. Now, the rules for this game are very badly written, and it's very sad to say, because, as I said earlier, in order to enjoy this game, you have to feel the game, you have to enjoy the climate, you have to enjoy the setting, the period in which the game is set. But in order to live a story, in order to enjoy the story, you have to be comfortable with how the game works in order to focus on the narrative and on the story. It's very, very difficult to focus on it at the beginning of the game, because it's very hard to start playing. The rulebook is a mess. In most war games, the approach is very straightforward. You have the turn sequence, and then you have the explanation of how different phases of the turn look. Here the approach is different. You do have the turn sequence, which is described in a more precise way on the player's aid, not in the rulebook, but then the rules are scattered, the rules are in different places of the rulebook. Additionally, when you do find the interesting part, it is sometimes explained in such a way that you do have doubts how to play. For instance, the core rules governing how to create the garrison deck, then also the campaign deck, are written in such a way that you really have doubts concerning how many decks you will be creating during each of those phases. The rules are not well written. This rulebook should be rewritten, presented in a different way. The second thing concerning the quality of the components that we receive is the grognard sheet. In the list of the components, we can read that we receive 6 of them, 1 for each player. But in reality, only 1 copy was included in the final game. We receive more ledger sheets, which can be used as well as grognard sheets in order to keep track of all the information concerning our stats, but they require to write on them. So it's up to us to choose from which element to use during the game. I personally prefer the grognard sheet, but I received only 1. So if I received tons of markers in order to track my glory, Napoleon's notice experience, I'd like to use those markers. If I use the ledger sheet, I won't be using those markers because I will be using a pencil in order to write all my stats. So I prefer to receive more grognard sheets, not only 1. I know that I can copy this sheet to print additional ones in order to play in a group of 3 or 4 players, but the quality of the components that I receive won't be the same. I prefer to receive more grognard sheets and not a stack of ledger sheets, which are pieces of paper which I can copy, which I can print, and which quality will be the same as well as the one that I received in the box. You might ask, why don't you use 1 grognard sheet and place all the markers on the 1 grognard sheet that you have? Well, because you are using a lot of markers, you are tracking a lot of information, so even placing markers from 2 players makes it already clumsy and makes it already uncomfortable to use. Not speaking of using 3 or 4 sets of markers, because this will be very chaotic. You won't be seeing absolutely anything on this sheet. Everyone needs his own sheet, so you should be using the ledger sheet, or you should print additional grognard sheets and use 1 per player. Concerning the gameplay, now Legion of Honor is a very specific game, because this is not a game in which you will be able to change the outcome of history. In contrast to many other war games, you won't be deciding the fate of the Battle of Eylau, of the Battle of Wagram, of the Battle of Quatre Bras. The outcome of those battles will be the same as it was historically. What can change is your own future. What can change is the fact, will you be wounded? Will you be taken prisoner? Will you be promoted? Those are those things which can change from game to game. Playing this game several times will bring all the same events in the same order, and their outcome will be very much similar, with some very small exceptions. This makes the game quite repetitive in its core, because you will be reliving the same events over and over. What will change is the core to which you will be assigned during a campaign, your current wealth, your current glory, your current rank. So each time your career will be different, although it will be a career shaped by the same events which will happen from game to game. Of course, you will have also some specific garrison events. You will have some special campaign cards which will vary from game to game, but the crucial ones, which are really the backbone of the game, will be the same. Additionally, we can argue, is this really a game or is this a simulation of the epoch? And I'd say that it is rather a simulation than a game, because in a game you have the possibility of changing its outcome. You have a lot of tools which enable you to make impactful decisions. Here, the decisions that you will be making are not very important in terms of how the game evolves, and the majority of them will require random die rolls. You will be rolling a lot of dice, and the outcome of what happens will be very random. Sometimes you can be killed during the first season if you are unlucky enough to roll certain results. At other times, you will live the whole game without any problems, without even being wounded, because you will be constantly rolling lucky results, and you won't have a lot of impact on it. You won't have some modifiers which you can use. Sometimes those modifiers are in the game and you can use them, but at most times you will be just rolling the dice and seeing the result. So if I were to judge this game from a gamer's perspective, is this a game in which I can have impactful decisions, in which I can change the outcome of history, in which at the end of the game I can feel that my career was due to my decisions? I'd say no. I'd say that it was at most times due to some random events and my dice rolling. But if I were to judge this game from the simulation perspective, and I were to answer to a question, is this a game which really helps you to better understand how it was to live in the Napoleonic period, how difficult it was to be promoted, to survive some battles, how unlucky you could have been sometimes, I'd say yes, it's a nice simulation. So, as I said a few moments ago, this is a very specific game. It is a game which will suit fans of Napoleonic Wars, which will suit people who like narrative games, who like to live a story, who like to tell a story, who like to enjoy playing with guys who share the same passion. But if you're looking for a game which will give you tools and tell you you can change the outcome of history, this won't work. This is not such a game. It is a very specific, very narrative game focused on the perspective of an individual soldier living the adventures of the Napoleonic Wars through the scope of the events which shaped the period, but at the same time a game in which you won't be very focused on what you're doing, what decisions you are making, because most of them will be related to the cards that you draw and the die rolls that you make. So if you're interested in the Napoleonic period, you want to learn more about it, or you know a lot but you have searched for a game which would give you the opportunity to become a grognard and to relive all the Napoleonic Wars, Legion of Honor might be an interesting choice. But if you do not like games in which you have a lot of decisions to make, in which you can change the outcome of the game, Legion of Honor won't be an interesting game. It will be rather a simulation, something which won't suit everyone. This was a review of Legion of Honor released by Clash of Arms Games. Thank you a lot for watching it. I invite you also to take a look at our other videos. Take also a look at the content that I publish on Facebook and Instagram. Have a nice day and see you next time.